Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I am Justin, aka Trinidad Dracula.
Yo, what's good? It's Nico, aka Dayman, enemy of the Nightman.
I'm Dan, the Blood God.
And we are joined by a very special guest. You might remember him if you listened to our Void episode. Who is it?
It's Ish, that one black guy who was on the council, like the one black guy.
There was that one dude on the council.
Gotta have one.
Just the
He was
one.
a diversity hire.
He was the only one. That's it.
Hey, you noticed, did he die?
He didn't have any lines.
He didn't die, did he?
He did not
He did
die.
not die.
He did not die, but he didn't have any lines, so.
I mean, didn't he become a skeleton flying?
Wait, no,
rat
yeah, he
thing?
did.
He
They
did
all
die. He totally did die.
did.
He died in Gruesome Death, guys.
Oh,
He died in
never mind.
All of them did.
We know what we're talking about here.
Well, as you might be able to guess if you really like this movie, we're talking about Blade. So it was directed by Stephen Norrington, and it's starring, obviously, Wesley motherfucking Snipes as Blade.
Legal name.
We've got Chris Christopherson as Whistler.
Also legal name. All right.
Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost, and Boucher Wright as Karen, and Donald Logue as Quinn. So this movie opens in the year 1967 with a woman who apparently had just been attacked by a vampire, also simultaneously, well, not simultaneously, but at the hospital now after the fact, giving birth to a baby boy. Shut up.
Give it a second shot.
Hey, it's movie magic, man.
She apparently dies, but the boy lives on. Now, fast forward to present day. Well, I mean, 1997, a vintage year. And we see, a young man basically falling for a vampire's trap. So she lures him to this club full of vampires, and there's like a rave going on. And then it starts to rain blood, like literal blood rains in the club.
Some Slayer shit.
Yeah. And they plan on eating him when Blade arrives. He makes quick work of the vampires, but he's interrupted by the cops before he can finish one of them off. So, yo, Ish, what happens after that?
Well, Blade follows the vampire to the hospital
Oh, shit.
because that's where they took him, because they thought he was a dude. And he arrives way too late.
Ah,
Because that
shit.
vampire has started to attack people.
Ah, shit.
Blade then wounds that vampire, who runs away again, and he sees an injured woman on the ground. That's who the dude was just attacking. She reminds him of his mother, so he takes her back to the HQ. And at HQ, we meet his mentor, Whistler. Yes. And Whistler gives that woman an injection to try and counter the vampire bite.
I want to point out that injection was full of garlic, meaning this next person would likely be immune.
Later.
Nico, why don't you go ahead and tell us what happens post that?
Bro, can I just say, I was at the grocery store one day, and they actually sell garlic juice. Like, I was not hip to that, so this shit is based in facts, apparently. Anyway, that woman's name is Karen Jensen, and she's a hematologist, a blood researcher and doctor. She learns that Whistler and Blade are vampire hunters through deductive fucking reasoning, and also them telling her as much. Blade is a half-blood, aka a Dampier, who Whistler found when Blade was a teenager. The pair are hunting Deacon Frost, the player are hunting Deacon Frost, a cuck vampire. Deacon is translating some ancient text, meanwhile, that will unlock a ritual that will give him the power of Blood God. Blade and Karen then launch an attack on Deacon's research facility, which I guess is underneath his apartment. And Karen learns that Blade still has the bloodlust of standard vampires, but he takes a serum to kill the craving. Unfortunately, his body is starting to reject the serum.
True, but I mean, they launched an attack, so Deacon can't let that go past, right, Dan?
That's true. So now Deacon has to launch an attack on Blade's headquarters while Blade is gone, and ends up capturing Karen and mutilating Whistler. Blade finds Whistler, who's still alive, barely, and Whistler indicates that, 1, Blade is the key and that Deacon needs his blood to finish the ritual, and 2, that Blade needs to kill him so that he doesn't turn. Needs to kill Whistler, I should say, so that Whistler doesn't turn into a vampire.
Yeah.
Blade can't bring himself to kill his mentor, so he hands Whistler a gun, and as Blade walks away, we hear it fire and see Whistler's arm go limp.
All right, so, Blade listens to Whistler, right, Nico, and he doesn't pursue Deacon Frost?
Not at all. He completely ignores the advice and launches an all-out attack on Deacon's hideout. So he runs into his mother, then, who is now a vampire loyal to Deacon. And we're going to talk about that, don't worry. And he's caught. Deacon then drains his blood and undergoes the ritual. Karen finds Blade weakened and in need of his serum, and she lets him drain some of her blood to sort of like heal up and get his strength back. So he powers up and smashes Deacon's vampire guard, finally making it to Deacon. But by the way, we mean that in the most literal terms, not as in the sexual intercourse way. Blade cannot hurt Deacon, though, as he constantly regenerates. But he does make use of one of Karen's inventions, a blood coagulant that fucking explodes to kill Deacon for good.
All right, Dan, so how does this one finish out?
So this one ends with Karen and Blade escaping from Deacon's hideout, and Blade says that he needs a better serum. Blade keeps up his crusade against the undead, and the movie closes with him killing a vampire in Moscow.
Okay. So fairly action-packed. Let's go ahead and, talk about the technical bits first. So, Ish, what'd you think about the visuals, man?
I mean, amazing, really. Especially for a movie from the 90s. Everything's dark and gritty, you know what I mean? Everything's really like, oh, we're vampires, everything. We live in the night. We live in the recesses of society and stuff like that. And they try to make it that be like club life. So I was like, all right, I'm with it.
In the back of a fucking butcher shop.
Yeah, right. Some of the other things, though, I like that how they play with light. You know what I mean? The vampires, like I said, they're known for being dark, mysterious creatures. But there's a lot of like well-lit scenes here. They have like, just like lighting wise, like everything's bright and shiny. And you can see everybody very clearly. And I think it's really cool to like put them out of the darkness into like the light, Because in the later movies, especially for this series, they tried more to push them into the dark. And they didn't like showcase their vampires, which they needed to. Like visually too, like costume wise, like everything was counterculture 90s and everything.
Fucking for real.
Yeah,
everything was kind of, oh, look at my hair. Look, I'm just disheveled for no reason. Like, all right, okay, we get it. But it works. That's the imagery they wanted to give us. So that's what we got. And the vampire lords, them being like regal, and like the purebloods, they're regal and they're wearing suits. Everything's tailored and stuff like that, down to like, oh, you got turned, but you were human before, so that means you're trash. you're sitting there like ratty, like button up and a leather jacket and everything like that. Like I like that visually.
So speaking of the leather, Nico, it's no coincidence that almost everyone is out here rocking the
Everyone.
Wow.
Everyone is out here wearing that. I mean, so what'd you think about some of the costume design, Nico?
So this movie is a very quintessential late 90s and also like early 2000s just by the association of it. And it oozes aesthetic, combining the like everyone wearing black, everyone wearing leather with like you were talking about the really bright scenes, and they had a lot of washed out sort of color palettes in there that made it look very bleak and dark, and that fits with the aesthetic overall. But in general, the costume design was really, really good. It just looked fucking classy.
All right. And now we're going to go ahead and swap over to the audio bit a little bit. So, Dan, tell me, what did you think about, well, first off, how'd you feel about the soundtrack and the score that we heard throughout the film?
That was pretty good. It also was fairly late 90s, early 2000s.
There was a lot of techno.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Like acid and like...
Yeah, dude.
Both visually and soundtrack-wise kind of reminded me of Resident Evil.
True.
Oh, bro, yeah.
That movie was very 90s, 2000s. I know that was like early 2000s. Like this movie, I think, kind of fit into that mold as well. But I mean, I thought it was pretty good. The soundtrack was good, and the audio technical aspect was pretty darn good. I thought it sounded good. So
the sound effects were definitely a product of their time too. Like every second when there was a punch, you heard the like. But that was the thing back then. That was the thing. You just did that.
I was literally about to say that there was times where Blade would be fighting a vampire and they'd be punching each other really quickly.
Sounds like fucking Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, it was. I was like, oh shit, like someone's about to go Super Saiyan here. But
Destructo Day.
But no, I mean it was pretty cool. Also on the sound, I would also want to note real quick, when it wasn't doing the whole techno thing, there was actually a couple, kind of hip hop tracks in the soundtrack as well. Particularly one track, it was a real chill, mellow, like the drums came in and I was like, oh shit, this is like, it's like someone listened to the RZA's drums and tried to copy it.
I feel like that the DJ Crush like song in there. Like it was one of
Yep.
the DJ Crush songs.
Yep.
In there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was like, yo, like that shit was crazy because I was like, it was at Deacon Frost party too. They were like listening to that. I was like, wait, what? These people listening to that? But no, it
makes sense. It
cool.
ties into the whole counterculture. Like,
True.
They're not listening to like country music and like rock music and everything. They're listening to rap and acid techno and drumming.
Yeah.
Oh man.
True. So I guess we have to kind of, come to a consensus here. Does this really hold up? And Ish, I mean, you kind of already said it, but to you, this holds up after, all the time this past?
The only complaint I had was the blood effects at the end.
Yes.
That's
Really?
literally it.
Same.
That's the only thing where I was like, this is dumb. But everything else was just like, this is perfect. This is great. What bad can I say, really? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
True. So Dan, I wanted to follow up on that. So the whole coagulant thing that we talked about, it basically has this effect where when a vampire's hit with the coagulant, they kind of swell up until they explode. How'd you feel about that effect?
I thought it looked a little cheesy. I thought that was a product of its time, but that and the end where Ish said, where there's like a ton of blood when Blade and Deacon are
Like
fighting.
syrup, kind of.
Yeah. And whenever he gets cut in half and then he comes back in, I'm like, all right, dude, that's not even good blood.
Yeah, like you could fucking tell.
Yeah, it's not even good blood.
Yeah, the rest of the effects I thought were pretty good. And like when a vampire dies, they kind of explode a little bit, disintegrate, explode sort of. And I was like, that looked kind of cool. So it was mostly the coagulant explosion that looked a little weird, and then the end effects that looked kind of weird to me.
All right. And Nico, I have one effect question, I guess, in particular to ask you about.
Hit me.
It's Quinn. So Quinn is kind of the punching bag throughout this movie. I mean, he gets set on fire. He gets both his arms
He's
chopped
on the chopping
off.
room floor, yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think? And he was really there to showcase, I think, a lot of the cool effects. I mean, they burned him and his charred corpse got up and started biting people. I mean, did you buy that?
Honestly, yeah. But I will say that while some members of the pod tonight had the prestigious ability to watch this in 4K, I was watching this in a lowly, pedestrian 480p, which was true to the time, motherfuckers. But, yeah, no, it was fine. It was fine.
I mean, the man didn't have to call no names, but it was me.
Why did you out yourself? It could have been anybody.
Yeah.
And I will say that in like watching the whole 4K restoration type deal, it was really dope. It was really dope. I think sometimes some of the effects that were maybe a little bit more dated stand out even more when it's that, like HD. But there are other scenes, for example, there's a scene that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later where the vampires are on the beach and the sun's about to come up.
That was a dope scene.
Yeah, it was.
But like literally that scene was actually really, really good looking. I was like, oh shit, that's pretty good. But I guess, and Dan, I'm gonna have to forward this question to you a little bit. So nowadays, we live in the era of the comic book movie. I mean, we've had literally Disney had phases for all these comic book movies. But Blade didn't have any of that. It was just Blade when it came out. So do you think we could credit this with kind of starting or kicking off the comic book craze a little bit?
I do. I was kind of reading that like it was the first big successful, not like major, but first successful comic book movie in a while. And I think the year prior was Batman and Robin, which flunked pretty bad and a lot of people hated it. So this movie came out and like was a success. Like they made a decent amount of money off of it. And it was a relatively unknown comic character and everything. It was just Blade. It wasn't like a Superman, Spider-Man, Batman kind of thing. And of course, I think it was the next year, right? Or a year or two later that Spider-Man came out, I think.
Spider-Man came out early 2000s, yeah.
Oh, so maybe a few years later than.
Pretty close, though.
I don't know that it was the first, I wouldn't call it the first, smash hit comic book movie or anything, but I think it was sort of like the precursor. It set the stage for a lot of the rest of them.
All right. And I mean, so here's another thing too, right? This movie was undoubtedly popular. Ish. How much of that do you think is down to Wesley Snipes just being Wesley Snipes?
Oh, so much. I mean, when you sit there and you look at who else they wanted to play Blade, I think that both who was it, Denzel Washington and Lawrence Fishburne are great actors, but them being Blade would be weird. It'd be a weirder.
Be like Dad Blade.
That's
Right?
true, man.
Yeah, even though they were not. I guess they weren't that old then.
Don't touch that thermostat.
It was still right. It's still like there's a different vibe that they would bring to this whole thing. I think Wesley Snipes was the perfect amount of action and like trying to make things serious. You know what I mean? He has a very good, like, just cold demeanor throughout the whole movie, and in a lot of like other roles that he's done.
True. So, real quick, one thing that I think this movie actually had a little bit of an interesting take on too is the whole kind of vampire lore. So we touched on it earlier, Ish said it, where there are these nobles who they look down on Deacon Frost because he's basically an outsider because he was turned. He wasn't born a vampire.
Yep.
I thought that was actually a pretty interesting play on like old school vampire lore where you have these nobles who they run shit basically. And the people who are just converted over, I mean, aside from the whole myths of like, you could turn into potentially, and this is something I really liked as well. Karen's ex-boyfriend or whatever, her coworker, he ends up getting bitten, but he doesn't turn into a vampire. He actually turns into
a ghoul or something. Like,
That's exactly it. He turns into a ghoul. And that's a big piece of vampire lore. This is actually one of the first mainstream vampire movies where I've seen that.
I think it's the only one I've seen.
Where they actually have ghouls. And they're like, yeah, you don't always turn into a vampire. Like, they have a conversation about it. Like, yeah, sometimes you just turn into this.
Question about well, not that exactly, but there's a police officer at one point, and Blade is like, yeah, he's a familiar, I think is what they call him.
Right.
He's not a vampire yet, but he's, if he does a good job and obeys his master's command, then his master will turn him into a vampire. Is that part of like vampire lore? Is that a thing?
Yeah. So in that, a familiar in that aspect is usually, I think it's attributed to like witches and stuff like that, to where like they would have some sort of being, be it like humanoid or animal, that would basically protect and do their bidding and whatnot. And I like how they twisted it in the Blade franchise to where if you're familiar, that means that you're a human, you were born and everything, you weren't created or anything like that. But they mark you and then they say, hey, if you do good, we'll do this for you, which is different than like a thrall to where they would just like mind control you.
Now, another, I guess we'll talk about this too. It's very, very interesting how the council themselves, they have a discussion with Deacon because Deacon has these, bumping nightclubs and he wants to be out there.
Yep.
He wants to be out in the world and
Wants to be vampire Steve Jobs.
well, actually, he wants to be the vampire Lestat, if you've seen Queen of the Damned. But he really is out here like trying to raise hell. And the elders are like, nah, we have to fall back.
Yep.
That's not what we do. And interesting, there's like, we have deals. So the vampires actually own half of whatever city they're in. I don't know what city they're supposed to be in.
New Orleans.
What?
Are you serious?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
I actually read about that. There's one of the scenes, I think it's when Karen first like actually meets Whistler, like after she kind of gets like comes back from, almost dead, sickness, turned whatever. And I almost said Wesley Snipes. Blade is looking at a map of New Orleans.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And the thing I was
at
reading
that.
was like, apparently, I'm not too familiar with the comics or anything, but I guess a lot of the different stories in the comics, not all of them, but a lot of them take place in New Orleans. So it's supposed to be like an ode to that. So,
Huh.
There you go.
because the whole movie, I was trying to figure out what city they're in.
I thought it was New York.
Yeah, we figured because of how prevalent it is in like Marvel comics.
Yeah. Right.
That's crazy. I did not realize.
All right.
So speaking of another thing, and I'm going to go now to our resident emotionologist.
Oh, wait, hold on. Before we move on, I'm so sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Speaking on the lore, like with the purebloods and the turned, for those people, I feel like that's a common trope, isn't it? For like vampires, to where if you're like old money vampire, you want to sit there and like not be out. You want to hide because you remember the days whenever there wasn't internet and everything, and people were like coming to your castle in order to like sit there and sneak you, and you're like, oh, I don't want that to happen. I remember how, I know how people.
Some motherfucker invented pornography on the internet, and they're all like, "This changes things."
Yeah,
Well,
like-
okay. So I actually have 2 points to make about that. The first is I would have killed if one of those guys, if he was like, it was thousands of years ago, and then one of the elders turns around and is like, I remember the days when it wasn't no internet, and you would have, and you would have found out. But no, secondly, you talk about the internet. There's actually a techno vampire in this movie. AKA the fat vampire.
Yeah.
Pearl?
Yeah, Pearl, bro.
I was having an argument with Bonner about that vampire because Bonner stated that how could a vampire get fat?
Wait, no, yeah, how could he? Unless he was turned after? But wasn't he a pureblood?
I don't know.
So I also read about that too.
Oh,
shit.
what? Yo,
Oh,
damn, where did you read up? Do you just
I read
have the
up on my
book?
shit, bro.
Coming
I read
fucking
up.
prepared.
Oh.
So apparently, Pearl got fat by eating the hearts of children. And
Oh, shit.
originally, in that same room, there were supposed to be like children's bodies like scattered around the whole room.
Oh,
Damn.
How many hearts is that?
A lot.
that's a lot. Is that why that one little girl was there?
I don't know.
She's the
Maybe.
one who got away. Jesus, dude.
No, we're gonna follow back up on that sentiment a little bit later. Not the sentiment, but the thing. But keep going, Dan.
Oh, I didn't mean it in the phrasing way.
Kill children, apparently.
But dude, yeah,
You
like that little girl was definitely in that little catacomb thing and kicking ass. And
Yeah.
maybe that's why she didn't get eaten. Like she just like
She just
taekwondo
kicks
kicked
ass.
him in the face or something.
She was doing the Chun-Li kicks, too.
Yo,
Yeah, bro.
she was boxing Blade. Yo, I was like, what
With
happened?
feet, with just the feet.
She's a real martial artist too.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Damn, you're coming
All right,
so
yo.
Bro, I
fucking
read
correct,
up on some
Stan.
shit.
I just watched and enjoyed the movie. You studied.
Yeah.
No. I studied it afterwards.
So I will say as well, it's actually I was saving this for the end, but I guess I have to try and redeem myself against the encyclopedia of Dan. But basically, no. So it's interesting that you say that, Dan, because Wesley Snipes is also a trained martial artist.
Oh yeah.
And I was gonna say I really respected one thing about it was the fact that that was Wesley Snipes in a lot of these shots. So it made some of the scenes look really cool, just from like a choreography perspective, because the camera didn't always have to cut away from him. Because some actors, like they either can't or they don't want to do certain things. But Wesley Snipes was up for it apparently, because there's a lot of shit that he does. But one thing in particular that made me kind of laugh, there was a part where he's like fighting this one dude, and they both are doing like spinning back hook kicks, and they just
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
and they just like
Fucking river dance that shit.
Yeah, they trade back hook kicks from a safe distance, so no one hits anyone.
No one's gonna get hit. No one's gonna get hit. They're actually like dancing capoeira or whatever. Like, no one's gonna get hit here.
So I was like, I don't know. That's pretty
man.
wild. That's pretty wild. But that was a good point about the lore, Ish. I guess taking it all the way back. Because you are right about that. And I think it's a super common trope as well, because it's not just in this movie. It's in a couple other movies as well, where it's always, the young vampires who want to rebel and take over.
And they want to be out there, and they want to they want people to know, like, hey, I'm a vampire. I'm better than you. But like the pureblood vampires are always like, hey, listen, look, we know we're better, but like, dude, chill out because we got to eat, I remember the steak days. They weren't good days, right?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I think it's also talking about people's emotions. Nico, as I said before, you are the resident emotionologist.
And you're the underwater philosopher, so let's just fucking get to the question.
Let's get to the question.
Damn.
What do we feel about Blade's emotions throughout? Because he doesn't necessarily say how he's feeling, but I thought personally a lot of his acting was actually pretty deep. I guess it was Wesley Snipes acting as Blade, was pretty deep. To me, the two are like the same in my mind. But
No, I get that.
there's a particular scene that I want you to talk about, which is when I was going to call him Whistler.
I was thinking that the whole movie, bro. I couldn't stop thinking Wesker.
When Whistler's mutilated, he's covered in blood and he's trying to tell Blade all this stuff. And Blade isn't really listening too much. He's just kind of with this little like cotton swab trying to clean up Whistler a little bit. And I actually thought that was a pretty touching scene because he couldn't bring himself to hurt him either. I mean, Nico, break it down. So does Blade actually show some real emotion throughout this movie?
So he does, but, and this is something I was talking with everyone about a little bit beforehand. It seems to me that Blade was one of the movies that pioneered the gravelly voice trope where everyone talks like they've got a sock in their throat. And by everyone, I mean the protagonist. Like, he's a bad motherfucker, and he isn't emotionless, but he's very gruff. He fits the persona of a horror action movie protagonist. But he is still a person, though, and he has two of the best lines in the entire movie. One of which I will say now, and the other one I'll leave for Justin. I'm sure he's going to want to take it. There's a scene where it's in the beginning, and the cops show up at the hospital, and they start shooting him. And instead of just having some, like, no, you have to stop, Blade says, "Motherfucker, you out your damn mind?" I just lost it. I love that shit. So yeah, he emotes.
I love those scenes too. I feel like whenever the director or whatever was sitting there and they were shooting the movie, like he'd just be like, "Wesley, we have nothing written for you. Just say what's natural." Like I was watching with some friends, and we pointed out several times in the movie where it's just like, did they write that, or did Wesley Snipes just say, "Hey, I'm going to say this," and they had to just be like, "All right, sure, no problem."
I bet he did that for the. There's that one like skating line he has. He says like
skating uphill.
He said, "Motherfuckers always want to skate uphill."
We said it the same thing. I guess. Oh my gosh, man. That was a good line, though. I love that line.
It's like some old sage advice.
Yeah, but it was also ridiculous because nobody's going to do that, bro. Stop.
Yeah. Like some shit you would expect Uncle Iroh from Avatar to say.
So, Dan, I actually wanted to ask you about one other thing as well. So there's definitely one thing, aside from, seeing his mentor be mutilated, another kind of emotional event for Blade is seeing his mom.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I mean, first off, as an aside, she was fine as hell. But secondly, and to the point now, I mean, he's got these emotions, right? I mean, seeing his mom's after all this time.
Especially when she's acting so weird, bro.
I almost felt like he didn't. Like,
what?
Because, like, at first he's like, "Mom?" And then, like, that's about it.
Yeah.
Like, and then he's off, like, fighting her and shit. And, like, I feel like if I saw my mom, who I thought was dead after however old he is, 20, 30 years, whatever, I feel like that would be a lot more emotional than what happened. Now, it did get kind of weird because...
that was what I want to talk about.
Before that, though, remember, he got separated from his mom at birth, didn't he? So I was kind of like, how did he even recognize her to be like
That's
mom?
True.
You know what I mean? And I guess that was kind of like why he was so distant and cold. But he knew it was his mother.
Yeah.
And I mean, she acted weird, bro. Not mom behavior.
Stepmom behavior.
Oh no. So Dan, go ahead, man, because I think you're about to talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so they start fighting. There's a point where he like pins her up against a wall or something. No, I think she pins him up against the wall.
She pins him, yeah.
And then she starts like rubbing his nose up on him and being like, "I'm your mother. Don't you recognize me? I'm your mom."
Like a centimeter away from his face.
Like rubbing their like cheeks together and shit and chins together and like all sensual. And it's like, what is really happening here? Did
that was literally what I said.
Did I click on the wrong movie?
Yeah. Like
did this just have a real long build up to the real part of the movie?
Bloodsuckers and Cocksuckers 4.
Wow.
Whoa. What? Anyways, nothing happens. It's pretty wholesome. He just penetrates his mother with a stake, thereby releasing her.
Hold up, though. It was a fucking bone.
That
wasn't a steak.
Wait.
That was just some dude's fucking bone. Yeah, that was a bone. And I was going to bring that up in point numero fucking 8. That was not, in fact, a steak. He boned down. I regret saying that.
Yeah. You should.
Okay, tell me that's not a metaphor.
Not after you just made your metaphor. Get out of here. It was a bone, though. And it was weird only because, like, why is she dying from that? Is that how snakes work?
She shouldn't die from
vampire
that.
lore. I thought it had to be wooden or something or silver. I didn't know you could just use anything.
You can't.
I
Just get
mean,
a fucking crowbar. Well, this will work.
I mean, if it goes through their body or their heart or something, it works because that's what happened. There was several scenes where vampires were dying, and like there was no silver and there was no actual stake looking thing. It just looked like somebody put something sharp into their body. You know what I mean?
And that does happen a lot in this movie.
Yeah. And it wasn't a sword or anything. It was just like the bone thing was just like weird. I was like, she shouldn't die from that. She should just be really hurt, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of the sword, you talk about the sword real quick. How often does Blade lose his sword to the point where he has like an anti-theft trap on his sword, where like if you don't adjust it correctly, it shoots out spikes and takes off your hand? How often do vampires take his sword from him?
Oh, so much.
Like 3 or 4 fucking times.
Yo, I also like how he's got his like sword strap contraption thing on his back, but then in his leather coat, he literally just like cut a hole in his leather coat to have the sword stick out of it. Like there's one scene where he's like walking away from the camera, and I saw there's literally just a hole poking out with the sword poking out. I was like, really? Whistler couldn't come up with anything for that?
Listen, Whistler is busy, okay? He's like the mechanic or whatever.
Also, why is he called Whistler? Is that a thing from the comics? I mean, I'm sure it is, but like we don't ever get any reason for that in the movie, right?
I swear he was created for the movie.
He was.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So like Whistler was made for the movie. I think that he first showed up in that old Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Then he was in the movie and everything, and he was not in the comics at all until after the movie.
Huh.
Go figure.
Yeah.
So, Nico, we talked about metaphors, but there's another metaphor I wanted you to, because you want to talk about it a little bit. So, what's the deal with, vampirism and race kind of being, some analogs here? What can you speak on that?
So there's a couple of scenes, but one in particular that really stuck out in my mind. There is the scene where we have Deacon and one of his vampire buddies and Karen. And Deacon is offering to basically turn her or take her and kill her. And he says, oh, you're so beautiful. You have such wonderful skin. And that's the only qualifier that he says. And for context, Karen is black, as is obviously Wesley Snipes. And they have some talking points in the movie about, blood purity, half-bloods, people not being, 100% or something. And I thought that was an interesting analog to how, not that it's a one-to-one, but it just made me think of it. I think it's interesting how we have those moments and they ring similar to how sometimes people talk about either mixed race people or just, you can think of like the one drop rule, even if you want to go even further back. It's just something that really stuck out to me, given that one scene in particular that all Frost said as the only descriptor about Karen was, hey, you have nice skin. Not like, oh, you're really smart or you're charming or I see you have a lot of initiative. Just, nah, bro, you got some nice skin.
So I actually have a question, kind of like a follow-up. So what does it say then that oftentimes the heroes in these vampire movies, there's like this, Vampire Hunter D, whatever else, where the heroes are half-bloods? Mm-hmm. What does that say?
So I see that as, I see that as kind of a play on just tropes that appear in a lot of fantasy. We have, oftentimes, like you were saying, we have protagonists who are either like half vampire, half something. We do often have the half-bloods as the protagonist to sort of get the audience interested just in them as people a little bit more, make them a little bit more spicy. He's got some regenerative abilities. He's got this strength. He's got all these cool just gadgets and who's its and what's its galore. And that is a trope that appears a lot, particularly in fantasy and science fiction. Like, think about how many times you've seen characters who are half robot or half elf or half whatever, and they end up being really important because of the fact that they are mixed between human and something else.
They always make their weakness a strength and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All that, yeah, I know. I feel you. It's the truth.
True.
And they did. Even in here, they had an Uncle Tom reference, and like whenever
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Frost is sitting there in the park with that little girl. He's like, "Hey, you're an Uncle Tom," and I was just like, "Why are you telling that?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's fair. You feel like that." Oh, that's weird. That's That's a weird way to put it, but all right, bro.
So let's talk real quick about some inconsistencies in this movie, because there's a couple, maybe more than a couple. And I want to lead with my inconsistency that I really not necessarily had a problem with, but Blade is the Daywalker, right? We all agree on this? Blade is the Daywalker?
Yeah.
No, he's fucking not, because all these other motherfuckers show up in the sunlight too. What the hell? Like,
But they need help. They need help, though, bro. They need help.
all right, but hold up, though. Tell me why. Deacon Frost and his buddies assassinated one of the leaders of the board. They took him out to the beach and let him watch the sunrise. When the sun came up, Deacon Frost and them put on some motorcycle helmets, and they were fine.
Yep.
What?
They also had like a fucking cream that they put on their skin.
It was legitimately sunscreen.
Yeah, it was sunscreen.
Even Blade said it. Even Blade
Yeah,
was
he said sunblock. Yeah,
he was like, sunscreen.
SPF 9000.
So not to be that guy, but unless he massaged sunscreen into his scalp,
Right.
that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, no, I feel you 100%. I was like, there's no way it's just like tropical, whatever the hell. Like, come on, dude.
Or the sun would have burned his eyes out or something. Like,
Right.
there's no way that happened.
Hey, all I'm saying, bro. All I'm saying, they got a Karen on their squad. She's a hematologist. they probably got some fucking cosmetologist on their squad. Some fucking makeup artist or some shit.
And the second piece that I want to say is this. So I did not, and could not understand for the life of me. Blade and this dude have this like hostage situation in public. They shooting off guns and everything.
And nobody's doing anything, right?
No.
Yeah. No, that's why I was like, they're in New York. They got to be in New York. Because where else are you going to like find a police officer who's getting beat up?
Yeah.
Who runs away at gunpoint, right? And like nobody's moving or anything until after the black dude like has the gun pointed. And he's just like, oh, well, we might die. And then like they just come back in and they're just like, oh, they're not shooting me. It's fine. It's whatever. Let's keep moving. I was like, they had to be in New York. There's no way they're not in any other city, bro.
And then Blade saves this little girl. He has no idea where she's from. She could have been kidnapped from anywhere. He's like,
Just go home.
just go home.
Go home.
You don't like city kid, man. Just go home. Whatever.
So, Dan, any inconsistencies that you saw in this one?
My favorite one is Deacon is trying to decipher this like ancient text, vampire text. And he's sitting there and this noble vampire comes in. He's like, that text cannot be deciphered. That language is not spoken. As there's a computer that is literally at that same moment, the camera zooms in on and it is actively translating.
Right now.
Like right then. And then later on, Blade gets a hold of like a piece of it, of the Bible thing, and he takes it to Whistler, and Whistler could just read it. Like Whistler just knows this shit.
He just looks at it. He's like, this is the blood clot. He's like, how do you know?
So like, people know this fucking language. It's just the fucking vampires are too dumb.
Oh wait, and speaking on that too, when he said he was going to translate it, he's like, oh, you can, whatever. After he translated it, it turns into like some weird audio-visual presentation.
Yeah.
And you can't say the words because now it's a video game, apparently. All right.
Yeah, that was weird.
Nico, I have a question for you, sir.
Shoot.
So that blood coagulant that Karen just pops up with, right?
Yeah.
She didn't make that, did she? Like, that was just a blood
Who did they
coagulant that they
get?
have in the hospital.
Yeah, she just like had that on deck and it was like, hey, guess what? It's going to be like if you put Mentos into Diet Dr. Pepper, and that's what happens. And that is what fucking happens.
I mean, that's not real, though, is it? Like, you don't just take this blood coagulant
No!
and then explode.
No! I mean, unless you're just like, yeah, I have a blood coagulant guy.
They try to like explain it away by like, oh, they're vampires, so like their blood's a little different. Like, that's why they explode. And I was like, I don't know about that, man. I like you guys' movie, but this is a little.
So, and I guess Ish or Nico, you guys have anything that you guys want to point out as an inconsistency or something weird where it's like, why exactly did this happen?
Nothing that I noticed. I had to go back and read in order to see like where there were places where things didn't really make sense, but they had small stuff like an earpiece missing or something like that, like weird continuity things, like nothing too weird that I didn't notice that we didn't already talk about.
All right. Anything from you, Nico?
Really, just the bone part. That was the biggest one, and we already covered that, so I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely a part where Blade tells Karen, like, you got to shoot him in the heart. shoot him in the head. Anything else, that's your ass.
Yeah.
And then they shoot them everywhere after that. No,
Yeah. He has a shotgun. He's just like gut shot and vampire. I'm like, all right, sure, dude, whatever. I guess it's like silver garlic bullets or something. I don't know, man. I love your movie. I don't care.
That's kind of what it boils down to, though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those movies, like, even though there's these, like, problems we've had, it's just
Doesn't fucking matter.
whatever.
Yeah.
So it's time for the critic review. And believe it or not, it's got a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is an aggregate. I
What?
know.
That's fair.
56% from the critics, 78% from the audience.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm going to go through. Give me your just quick how you feel about this movie. And on a scale from 1 to 100, what would you give it? Nico, you are first.
I am first, and I'm gonna give this an 87. It's so just fucking stupid fun, and it's a wild ride from start to finish. It's just, it's fucking good. Go watch it. It has problems, but like we've said, it doesn't matter. It's Blade. It's Wesley Snipes.
Dan, how you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. It's just a fun movie to watch. It's badass. It's got cool martial arts. It's got cool effects. Some of them are a little but all in all, it was just a good ass movie, and I say 85.
I actually, believe it or not, I actually give it an 85 myself. Fuck you, Dan. So I agree. It's a lot of fun. There's definitely like we said, we poked fun at it, but that's just for fun. Like I really like this movie a lot. So I would give it an 85 for sure. So Ish, what would you give it, man?
I hate to sit here and give it the same thing. But like legitimately, my range on this movie would be like if I was giving it a grade, like a B plus to an A, like a low A, like an A minus. So 85 to maybe 90, just because it was a good movie. It knew what it was. It knew what it was trying to do. It wasn't sitting here trying to be like Titanic or something like that. I didn't even like Titanic, but like, you know what I mean? It wasn't trying to take itself super serious or anything. It was like, hey man, we're an action vampire movie with martial arts and stuff, you know? Watch our movie, please. And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Thank you for delivering.
Yeah.
True enough. So now, we obviously gotta, just set it down. So is this one you would recommend to a friend? Dan?
Always. Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's all good. Always.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always from Ish. Dan, how about you, man?
Hell yeah.
All right, Nico?
I'm actually a little hesitant. Yes, the fuck?
It's a yes from me. Now, would this get your golden seal of approval, Nico?
You know what? Fuck it. Yeah, it's that fun.
Whoa. Whoa. High praise here.
Dan?
I don't think I can give that. This is a tough one for me because it's, as I think I've said in previous episodes, I feel like the golden stamp of approval, seal of approval, has to be like there's a special something about it. And I didn't quite get that. I love this movie, but it wasn't, I can't quite do it.
I agree. But let it be known that Dan shot that down.
I'll take that. I'll take it.
Wow, the betrayal. All right.
All right, so Ish, I have to ask, would you have given it a golden seal of approval or would you have agreed with me and Dan?
Can I give it half of one? Because I feel as though it's a movie that one started a lot. If we're talking about this industry of comic book movies, started a lot of movies, a lot of themes and stuff like just woven into all the other movies we see. Where you want to make a serious kind of superhero movie, it's like, oh man, have you seen Blade? You know what I mean? At the same time, like I can't get over that blood, man. Like that was pretty weird. Some of those effects were not that great. Some of the lines were a little cheesy, but I love the movie.
Those lines were great. You shut your whore mouth.
Hey, some of the lines were a little bit, yeah. But I'll give it half of one. I would like start to stamp the steel and then like sneeze and like kind of like drag it down a little bit so that nobody can see.
I'll take that as one for my side.
All right.
We're gonna round up.
Unfortunately, we could not come to a consensus, so it doesn't get the golden seal of approval, but it's still fun as hell. And you should definitely check it out. Any last thoughts before we bring this one to a cease, y'all?
Yeah, check out the sequels too, because they're not that bad either. What's up?
Oh, most def, and we're definitely going to review them at some point. And Ish, we definitely got to have you back for the sequel, bro, because
Please.
The Void has no sequels. The Void has no sequels.
Yeah.
So we need to bring you back for that.
Let me just say, I love Blade, and as much as I love Blade, the second was just that was
Yes.
the Blade movie. Right,
Yes,
me.
I was trying to tell these people, and don't spoil nothing. Don't spoil nothing.
I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just saying that movie was the movie for me when it comes to Blade.
Nico didn't believe me when I told him Blade 2 is the shit.
It is
Blade 2
amazing.
is Blade 1 on crack.
And like, I can't say anything else.
Yep.
I want
Fair
to go
enough.
into it. I can't say anything else. That movie was legit. It was a great sequel. Like, I don't even.
All right, anything from you, Dan? You, Nico?
No.
The only thing that I will say it is that I'm surprised you didn't say it. The other just golden fucking line is when we have, is it Deacon that he's fighting or is it someone else?
It was either Quinn or a random vampire.
Okay, no, it was just a random vampire. So Blade is, in fisticuffs with vampire du jour number 47, and the vampire just says, "Fuck you," and Blade goes, "Fuck me? No, you fuck this," and then he just like whips out his shotgun and just blasts him. It was fucking money.
The amazing one-liners from Wesley Snipes. Thank you.
On that note, we're going to wrap this one up. If you like what you've heard, or you want to tell us what you felt about it, go ahead and drop us a line. We're on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. Ish, where can the people find you, man?
Usually on Twitch, King Ish Walker. I stream whenever, usually after like 6 or so. So if you catch me, man.
True enough. True enough.
Fuck a time zone. You don't get shit from us.
No, nothing. Figure it out.
Well, as always, dear listeners, keep yourself safe, be kind to one another, and as always,
Don't ice skate up hills.
and don't open that door. Bye.